Hot D was our most anticipated show for this year, at least in terms of serious shows. It's hard to pretend like I'm not champing at the bit to get into another season of Rings of Power. But House of the Dragon Season 1 set the table for the Dance of Dragons, and it left us with the promise of great things to come.
Don't worry, they're coming! Not just 2 pizzas, there's gonna be 5, and they're gonna be huge, you won't believe it!
And Season 2 is still setting the table, apparently.
So what was the fucking point in all this then?
Yep, that pretty much sums up our thoughts on Season 2. After a full 8 episodes, we're left in pretty much the same place we were at the end of Season 1. While this sophomore season gave us some great character work and probably 2 really good episodes, the rest simply left us wanting. It offered some great character development, but it came at the expense of plot development, and a great season needs to strike a better balance between the two. I still like the show overall, and its quality is still well above most every other show out there, but this is just not what I wanted to see in Hot D's second season. So I'll go over everything good this season did, as well as the bad in this review. And of course, you can expect some spoilers, so consider yourself warned. The best thing Season 2 of House of the Dragon has going for it is its character work. With less movement on the plot, this character-driven season had much more time devoted to diving deep into each character's fundamental flaws, their personalities, their way of thinking, and their ambitions during this tumultuous Targaryen civil war. We saw a lot more of them overcoming their internal struggles, rather than external conflicts. But on the rare occasion where they did run into external conflicts, it produced some great action. The Battle of Rook's Rest and the Sowing of the Seeds were both fantastic set pieces full of consequence that were brought to satisfying conclusions. And a large part of what made those events so compelling was the incredible level of effects employed, particularly with everything surrounding the dragons. All of the effects employed this season were very good, but those dragons were an obvious standout in every scene they're in. And the sets, while noticeably limited in number this season, were great as usual, in addition to the props and costumes, just everything on screen. I think the show also explores some good themes, like power balances and characters projecting their childhood traumas on their own children, creating this inevitable vicious cycle. Alicent, for example, was made a political tool at a young age, and she's treated her kids in the same manner, now finding that it's too late to be the mother they needed a decade ago. Rhaenyra, on the other hand, was never really shown how to rule by Viserys, and now that she's queen in some fashion, she's neglected Jacaerys in the same way. The show also puts a heavy emphasis on the idea of patriarchy, and I don't care for it, but if you like that sort of thing, it's there in a big way. The acting was very good, as could be expected, with several actors doing a particularly great job with their roles. Rhys Ifan as Otto Hightower, Tom Glencarney as Aegon, Ewan Mitchell as Aemond, and Matt Smith as Daemon all did phenomenal work with what they were given. And Emma D'Arcy was great at times as Rhaenyra. The music was off the chain a lot of the time as well. Ramin Djawadi did a fantastic job scoring this season. And lastly, it's the world of Game of Thrones. It's a world we love to visit, and even in a so-so outing, it's still enjoyable to see this world and the stories within it. On the other side of the coin, the most palpable problem with Season 2 is how much everything within it was stretched to fill a season's worth of storytelling. The story was dragged out far longer than it would naturally be told, and the audience feels that, as it allows boredom to creep in.
You bore me. You all bore me.
Even individual scenes noticeably drag on at times, with characters often just gazing off silently for like 30 seconds, leading many to dub this show the House of Dragging Their Feet. But when the events of this season amount to only about 20 pages of book material apparently, that's to be expected. This leaves us with episodes that feel slow and bring us minimal plot advancement, a dearth of set pieces in comparison with the first season that could have livened things up, and repetitive scenes that you feel like we've already sat through 4 or 5 times. To that end, it's kind of funny to think how many times we visited the small council chamber, the Driftmark Port, Harrenhal, and Rhaenyra's council room on Dragonstone. We probably spent close to half the season in these 4 spots. I love exploring the world of Game of Thrones, and it's hard to scratch that itch when we're confined to these limited locations. And in this intriguing, fantastical world, there's no lack of scene ideas more interesting than some of these repetitive ones, and I think this season would have been better off broadening its horizons and exploring some different things. For example, people would have loved to get a few scenes meeting and getting to know Daeron in Old Town, especially when his young dragon Tessarion was taking to flight. Even showing us Adam claiming Sea Smoke and riding him for the first time, or providing more background and setup for the Dragon Seeds, would have been preferable to seeing Rhaenyra struggle for support for the 8th, 9th, and 10th time. And an interesting character like Damon was relegated to tripping on shrooms in Luigi's castle for about 5 episodes. It was great for his development, and he seemingly achieved a genuine breakthrough as a person, but it's hard not to feel like this badass warrior and leader of men was largely wasted this season. The point is, someone who really knows what they're doing could have delivered everything that happened this season in 4 episodes or less, and in a satisfying manner, leaving us the entire back half of the season to get into the actual development and the superheated conflict threatening to boil over. Who knows exactly how much this season suffered from the effects of the writer's strike and moving from a 10-episode season to 8, or if this season was purely the result of the creators wanting to drag the story out across as many seasons as possible. But either way, it all took its toll on the pacing and storytelling of Season 2. The other problem that came into full view as soon as the credits rolled after the finale was that this was yet another full season of setup for the Targaryen Civil War, and we're left in almost the exact same place we were at the end of Season 1. Much like Season 3 of The Bear was little more than an extended epilogue for its second season, Season 2 of House of the Dragon plays more like an extended prologue for Season 3 rather than a full season all its own. And in that regard, it was a real letdown, and it's easy for it to feel like a massive letdown when you consider how high our expectations were. Now, while there were a good number of great acting performances, much of this season missed the scene-stealing performances we've seen before in the show. Otto Hightower stole every scene he was in, and his presence was sorely missed after he was sent packing halfway through. We can also look back to what Viserys did for Season 1 to see some of what this season was missing in that regard. And when you miss the taste of a true powerhouse performance, and the repetitive scenes are starting to get stale, it would feel good to sink your teeth into some meaty action to distract from the things that are leaving a bad taste in your mouth. But there simply wasn't much action to speak of in this season outside of the Battle of Rook's Rest and the sowing of the seeds. I know there isn't a whole lot to work with in 20 pages of book material, but without much action, you start to feel just how much everything else is dragging on. I criticized the first season for not offering much of a moral balance between the greens and the blacks. And while I think Season 2 made a slight improvement in this regard, I still feel like it's clear who we're supposed to be rooting for. Which is a minor mistake in my opinion, as it could be very engaging for us to have to weigh each side's merits and morals, and would lead to livelier discussions for viewers to have once each episode is over. Or, even better from our showrunner's perspective, after the season has wrapped and the eager anticipation for the next one starts. It might be an unavoidable disparity between the greens and blacks given the source material, I don't know personally, but the creators haven't adhered all that closely to Fire and Blood anyway. Speaking of which, I think they've made a number of real mistakes in their adaptation of the book, based on my admittedly limited knowledge at least. For one, some characters are missing or have been replaced. For example, Rhaena looks to be replacing a book character that a lot of fans love. There seem to be some children and grandchildren missing from the show's family tree too. Also, several characters' personalities or relationships have changed and taken on a life of their own. Rhaenyra is much angrier in the book, distraught about losing her son Lucerys, something this show has totally glossed over, and it's not believable that her character from the book would spend 8 episodes doubting her position and pussyfooting about. She and Alicent also had nowhere near the relationship they have in the show, but that dynamic goes back to the very first episode, so they have no choice but to play it up in this season. Needless to say though, their book counterparts wouldn't have been sneaking back and forth between each other's castles and having these heartfelt, intriguing conversations. Both of those scenes are very good, but they come about in ways that ask the audience to suspend far too much disbelief. Book Rhaenyra definitely never made out with Mysaria either. That spit-swapping session came out of nowhere, it came at an extremely awkward time, and it never came up again and had no real effect on their relationship afterward. Of all the changes made from book to show, that scene was by far the most fanfiction-y. There's also a specific dragon that the show seems to be telling us pretty clearly is dead, one that is very importantly not dead at this point in the book, although it could be a bluff on the show's part. Even stating that Helaena doesn't like to ride her dragon Dreamfire is a departure that doesn't serve the show well. And when you have this fully completed story to work with when adapting your show, this is all cause for concern, and we have to question these decisions because it can lead House of the Dragon down some very absurd paths in the future. Now let's keep everything in perspective. This isn't the Acolyte we're dealing with. House of the Dragon is still a good show overall, with tremendous production quality, great characters, and a good story left to tell. And it's still better than most everything else on TV. But Season 2 would get kicked out of the army, because it's not being all it could be. While the show is still good, I'm giving this season in particular a debate watch, because I don't consider this second season to be appointment viewing, and I can't recommend that you run out and watch it for yourself. In fact, if someone asked, I'd tell them to just wait and binge Season 2 right before Season 3 comes out. There's still a lot of great stuff in this season, specifically with its character work and its production quality, but there's too little in the way of plot advancement, tension, conflict, and action to warrant a Great Watch label. If there was a Good Watch tier, then it would be a tougher choice between that and a Debate Watch. So if you think a Debate Watch is a bit harsh, Season 2 is right on that cusp. If you're all about the character development, then you'll probably enjoy this season and rate it higher. But in my opinion, a good story and a season that feels complete needs more than that. Viewers are giving Season 2 a 76% on Rotten Tomatoes, down slightly from the 83 Season 1 earned. It's not far off from what I'd give it, although when taking into account my expectations, I'd put it a bit lower. Meanwhile, it's only getting a 4.3 on Metacritic, which I think is harsh. Viewership for the Season 2 premiere was down just over 20% from its Season 1 premiere, but the Season 2 finale ended with its highest viewership numbers of the season, on par with Season 1's finale. And I'm very interested to see what kind of numbers Season 3's premiere draws in after what was a pretty lackluster outing in Season 2. This is just not what a lot of people wanted out of a second season of House of the Dragon, and it's not what they expected either. While the show still maintains a high overall quality, the events covered in Season 2 were dragged out well past the point of remaining interesting, with it often becoming boring or tedious in many people's eyes. And I can only hope that the creative teams behind all the other Game of Thrones shows in the works take the reception of Season 2 into account when crafting their stories. If this is the best you can offer after a 2-year hiatus, I don't think too many people would be upset waiting longer for a better product. Based on this season, I now have to question my confidence in the current creative team to deliver. If they don't stray much further from the source material and they stop dragging their feet, then everything will be hunky-dory. But that seems like a big if at this point. And I hope that they can get the budget necessary to do this story justice. No more having incredible scenes happening off-screen, please. Whatever happens, I'll be here to review Season 3, and I'll have read Fire and Blood by then, so stay tuned to HateWatchers for more in-depth analysis and fart jokes when that season rolls around. What was your opinion of Season 2? What was your favorite part of Season 2, and what was your biggest disappointment? Are you going to be coming back for Season 3? Do you think the creators need a shakeup, or at least a wake-up call? Let us know all that down in the comments. And remember to like the video, and subscribe to HateWatchers to catch our video of the funniest clips from House of the Dragon Season 2, as well as reviews of other current shows and movies. Thank you for discussing how not to train your dragon with us today, and we'll catch you on the next one.